When a white boxer kills a Pawnee and destroys his property, the other Pawnees do not trouble to seek him out. They kill any white person that comes along. Also, they make some white village pay deceased. S heirs the full cash value of deceased, together with full cash value of the property destroyed. They also make the village pay, in addition, 13 times the value of that property into a fund for the dissemination of the Pawnee religion, which they regard as the best of all religions, for the softening and humanizing of the heart of man. It is their idea that it is only fair and right that the innocent should be made to suffer for the guilty, and that it is better that 99 innocent should suffer than that one guilty person should escape. 253. Our Reverend Ament is justifiably jealous of those enterprising Catholics, who not only get big money for each lost convert, but get head for head besides. But he should soothe himself with the reflections that the entirety of their exactions are for their own pockets, whereas he, less selfishly, devotes only 300 taels per head to that service, and gives the whole vast 13 repetitions of the property indemnity to the service of propagating the gospel. His magnanimity has won him the approval of his nation, and will get him a monument. Let him be content with these rewards. We all hold him dear for manfully defending his fellow missionaries from exaggerated charges which were beginning to distress us, but which his testimony has so considerably modified that we can now contemplate them without noticeable pain. For now we know that, even before the siege, the missionaries were not generally out looting, and that, since the siege, they have acted quite handsomely, except when circumstances crowded them. I am arranging for the monument. Subscriptions for it can be sent to the American Board. Designs for it can be sent to me. Designs must allegorically set forth the 13 reduplications of the indemnity and the object for which they were exacted. As ornaments, the designs must exhibit 680 heads, so disposed as to give a pleasing and pretty effect. For the Catholics have done nicely, and are entitled to notice in the monument. Mottos may be suggested, if any shall be discovered that will satisfactorily cover the ground. Mr. Ament's financial feat of squeezing a 13-fold indemnity out of the pauper peasants to square other people's offenses, thus condemning them, and their women and innocent little children, to inevitable starvation and lingering death, in order that the blood money so acquired might be used for the propagation of the gospel, does not flutter my serenity, although the act and the words, taken together, concrete a blasphemy so hideous and so colossal that, without doubt, its mate is not findable in the history of this or of any other age. Yet, if a layman had done that thing and justified it with those words, I should have shuddered, I know. Or, if I had done the thing and said the words myself, however, the thought is unthinkable, irreverent as some imperfectly informed people think me. Sometimes an ordained minister sets out to be blasphemous. When this happens, the layman is out of the running. He stands no chance. We have Mr. Ament's impassioned assurance that the missionaries are not vindictive. Let us hope and pray that they will never become so, but will remain in the almost morbidly fair and just and gentle temper which is affording so much satisfaction to their brother and champion today. The following is from the New York Tribune of Christmas Eve. It comes from that journal's Tokyo correspondent. It has a strange and impudent sound, but the Japanese are but partially civilized as yet. When they become wholly civilized, they will not talk so. The missionary question, of course, occupies a foremost place in the discussion. It is now felt as essential that the Western powers take cognizance of the sentiment here, that religious invasions of Oriental countries by powerful Western organizations are tantamount to filibustering expeditions, and should not only be discountenanced, but that stern measures should be adopted for their suppression. The feeling here is that the missionary organizations constitute a constant menace to peaceful international relations. Shall we go on conferring our civilization upon the peoples that sit in darkness, or shall we give those poor things a rest? Shall we bang right ahead in our old time, loud, pious way, and commit the new century to the game? Or shall we sober up and sit down and think it over first? Would it not be prudent to get our civilization tools together, and see how much stock is left on hand in the way of glass beads and theology, and Maxim guns and hymn books, and trade gin and torches of progress and enlightenment, pat adjustable ones, good to fire villages with, upon occasion, and balance the books and arrive at the profit and loss, so that we may intelligently decide whether to continue the business or sell out the property and start a new civilization scheme on the proceeds. Extending the blessings of civilization to our brother who sits in darkness has been a good trade and has paid well, on the whole. And there is money in it yet, if carefully worked, but not enough, in my judgment, to make any considerable risk advisable. The people that sit in darkness are getting to be too scarce, and too shy. And such 256 darkness as is now left is really of but an indifferent quality, and not dark enough for the game. The most of those people that sit in darkness have been furnished with more light than was good for them or profitable for us. We have been injudicious. The blessings of civilization trust, wisely and cautiously administered, is a daisy. There is more money in it, more territory, more sovereignty, and other kinds of emolument than there is in any other game that is played. But Christendom has been playing it badly of late years, and must certainly suffer by it, in my opinion. She has been so eager to get every stake that appeared on the green cloth, that the people who sit in darkness have noticed it, and have begun to show alarm. They have become suspicious of the blessings of civilization. More they have begun to examine them. This is not well. The blessings of civilization are all right and a good commercial property. There could not be a better in a dim light. In the right kind of a light, and at a proper distance, with the goods a little out of focus, they furnish this desirable exhibit to the gentlemen who sit in darkness. Love, law, and order. Justice, liberty. Gentleness, equality. Christianity, honorable dealing. Protection to the weak, mercy. Temperance, education. And so on. 257 there. Is it good, sir? It is pie. It will bring into camp any idiot that sits in darkness anywhere, but not if we adulterate it. It is proper to be emphatic upon that point. This brand is strictly for export apparently. Apparently. Privately and confidentially, it is nothing of the kind. Privately and confidentially, it is merely an outside cover, gay and pretty and attractive, displaying the special patterns of our civilization which we reserve for home consumption, while inside the bale is the actual thing that the customer sitting in darkness buys with his blood and tears and land and liberty. That actual thing is, indeed, civilization, but it is only for export. Is there a difference between the two brands? In some of the details, yes. We all know that the business is being ruined. The reason is not far to seek. It is because our Mr. McKinley and Mr. Chamberlain and the Kaiser and the Tsar and the French have been exporting the actual thing with the outside cover left off. This is bad for the game. It shows that these new players of it are not sufficiently acquainted with it. It is a distress to look on and note the mismoves. They are so strange and so awkward. Mr. Chamberlain manufactures a war out of materials so inadequate and so fanciful that they make the boxes grieve and the gallery laugh. And he tries hard to persuade himself that it isn't purely a private raid for cash, but has a sort of dim, vague respectability about it somewhere, if he could only find the spot, and that, by and by, he can scour the flag clean again after he has finished dragging it through the 258 mud, and make it shine and flash in the vault of heaven once more as it had shone, and flashed there 1,000 years in the world's respect, until he laid his unfaithful hand upon it. It is bad play bad, for it exposes the actual thing to them that sit in darkness, and they say, "What, Christian against Christian, and only for money? Is this a case of magnanimity, forbearance, love, gentleness, mercy, protection of the weak, this strange and overshowy onslaught of an elephant upon a nest of field mice, on the pretext that the mice had squeaked in insolence at him conduct which no self-respecting government could allow to pass unavenged?" As Mr. Chamberlain said, was that a good pretext in a small case, when it had not been a good pretext in a large one? For only recently Russia had affronted the elephant 3 times and survived alive and unsmitten. Is this civilization in progress? Is it something better than we already possess? These harryings and burnings and desert makings in the Transvaals, this an improvement on our darkness? Is it, perhaps, possible that there are two kinds of civilization, one for home consumption and one for the heathen market? Then they that sit in darkness are troubled, and shake their heads, and they read this extract from a letter of a British private, recounting his exploits in one of Methuen's victories, some days before the affair of Madgersfontein, and they are troubled again. We tore up the hill and into the entrenchments, and the Boers saw we had them. So they dropped their guns and went down 259 on their knees and put up their hands clasped and begged for mercy. And we gave it them with the long spoon. The long spoon is the bayonet. See Lloyd's Weekly, London, of those days. The same number and the same column contains some quite unconscious satire in the form of shocked and bitter upbraidings of the Boers for their brutalities and inhumanities. Next, to our heavy damage, the Kaiser went to playing the game without first mastering it. He lost a couple of missionaries in a riot in Shantung, and in his account, he made an overcharge for them. China had to pay $100,000 apiece for them. In money, 12 miles of territory, containing several millions of inhabitants and worth $20 million, and to build a monument and also a Christian church. Whereas the people of China could have been depended upon to remember the missionaries, without the help of these expensive memorials. This was all bad play. Bad because it would not, and could not, and will not now or ever, deceive the person sitting in darkness. He knows that it was an overcharge. He knows that a missionary is like any other man. He is worth merely what you can supply his place for, and no more. He is useful, but so is a doctor, so is a sheriff, so is an editor. But a just emperor does not charge war prices for such. A diligent, intelligent, but obscure missionary, and a diligent, intelligent country editor are worth much, and we know it, but they are not worth the earth. We esteem such an editor, and we are sorry to see him go. But when he 260 goes, we should consider 12 miles of territory, and a church, and a fortune over compensation for his loss. I mean, if he was a Chinese editor, and we had to settle for him. It is no proper figure for an editor or a missionary. One can get shop-worn kings for less. It was bad play on the Kaiser's part. It got this property, true, but it produced the Chinese revolt, the indignant uprising of China's traduced patriots, the Boxers. The results have been expensive to Germany and to the other disseminators of progress and the blessings of civilization. The Kaiser's claim was paid, yet it was bad play, for it could not fail to have an evil effect upon persons sitting in darkness in China. They would muse upon the event and be likely to say, "Civilization is gracious and beautiful, for such is its reputation. But can we afford it? There are rich Chinamen, perhaps they can afford it, but this tax is not laid upon them. It is laid upon the peasants of Shantung. It is they that must pay this mighty sum, and their wages are but 4 cents a day. Is a better civilization than ours, and holier and higher and nobler? Is not this rapacity? Is not this extortion? Would Germany charge America $200,000 for 2 missionaries, and shake the mailed fist in her face, and send warships and send soldiers, and say, 'Seize 12 miles of territory, worth $20 millions as additional pay for the missionaries, and make those peasants build a monument to the missionaries, and a costly Christian church to remember them by?' And later would Germany say to her soldiers, 'March through 261 America and slay, giving no quarter. Make the German face there, as has been our Hun face here, a terror for 1,000 years. March through the great republic and slay, 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 carving a road for our offended religion through its heart and bowels.' Would Germany do like this to America, to England, to France, to Russia? Or only to China, the helpless imitating the elephant's assault upon the field mice? Had we better invest in this civilization, which called Napoleon a buccaneer for carrying off Venice's bronze horses, but which steals our ancient astronomical instruments from our walls, and goes looting like common bandits? That is, all the alien soldiers except America's. And Americans again accepted? Storms frighten villages and cables the result to glad journals at home every day. Chinese losses, 450 killed. Ours, 1 officer and 2 men wounded. Shall proceed against neighboring village tomorrow, where a massacre is reported. Can we afford civilization? And next Russia must go and play the game injudiciously. She affronts England once or twice with the person sitting in darkness observing and noting. By moral assistance of France and Germany, she robs Japan of her hard-earned spoil. All swimming in Chinese blood port Arthur the person again observing and noting. Then she seizes Manchuria, raids its villages, and chokes its great river with the swollen corpses of countless massacred peasants, that astonished person still observing and noting. And perhaps he is saying to himself, "It is yet another civilized power, with its banner of the 262 Prince of Peace in one hand, and its loot basket, and its butcher knife in the other. Is there no salvation for us but to adopt civilization and lift ourselves down to its level?" And by comes America, and our master of the game plays it badly, plays it as Mr. Chamberlain was playing it in South Africa. It was a mistake to do that. Also, it was one which was quite unlooked for in a master who was playing it so well in Cuba. In Cuba, he was playing the usual and regular American game, and it was winning, for there is no way to beat it. The master, contemplating Cuba, said, "Here is an oppressed and friendless little nation which is willing to fight to be free. We go partners and put up the strength of 70 million sympathizers and the resources of the United States. Play. Nothing but Europe combined could call that hand, and Europe cannot combine on anything." There, in Cuba, he was following our great traditions in a way which made us very proud of him, and proud of the deep dissatisfaction which his play was provoking in continental Europe. Moved by a high inspiration, he threw out those stirring words which proclaimed that forcible annexation would be criminal aggression. and in that utterance fired another shot heard round the world. The memory of that fine saying will be outlived by the remembrance of no act of his, but one that he forgot it within the 12-month, and its honorable gospel along with it. For presently came the Philippine temptation. It was strong, it was too strong, and he made that 263 bad mistake. He played the European game, the Chamberlain game. It was a pity, it was a great pity, that error, that one grievous error, that irrevocable error. For it was the very place and time to play the American game again, and at no cost. Rich winnings to be gathered in, too, rich and permanent, indestructible, a fortune transmissible forever to the children of the flag. Not land, not money, not dominion, no, something worth many times more than that dross. Our share, the spectacle of a nation of long harassed and persecuted slaves set free through our influence. Our posterity's share, the golden memory of that fair deed. The game was in our hands. If it had been played according to the American rules, Dewey would have sailed away from Manila as soon as he had destroyed the Spanish fleet after, putting up a sign on shore guaranteeing foreign property and life against damage by the Filipinos, and warning the powers that interference with the emancipated patriots would be regarded as an act unfriendly to the United States. The powers cannot combine, in even a bad cause, and the sign would not have been molested. Dewey could have gone about his affairs elsewhere, and left the competent Filipino army to starve out the little Spanish garrison and send it home, and the Filipino citizens to set up the form of government they might prefer, and deal with the friars and their doubtful acquisitions according to Filipino ideas of fairness and justice ideas, which have since been tested and found to be of as high an order as any that prevail in Europe or America. 264, but we played the Chamberlain game, and lost the chance to add another Cuba and another honorable deed to our good record. The more we examine the mistake, the more clearly we perceive that it is going to be bad for the business. The person sitting in darkness is almost sure to say, there is something curious about this, curious and unaccountable. There must be two Americas, one that sets the captive free, and one that takes a once captive's new freedom away from him, and picks a quarrel with him with nothing to found it on, then kills him to get his land. The truth is, the person sitting in darkness is saying things like that, and for the sake of the business we must persuade him to look at the Philippine matter in another and healthier way. We must arrange his opinions for him. I believe it can be done, for Mr. Chamberlain has arranged England's opinion of the South African matter, and done it most cleverly and successfully. He presented the facts, some of the facts, and showed those confiding people what the facts meant. He did it statistically, which is a good way. He used the formula, twice 2 are 14, and fro leaves 35. Figures are effective, figures will convince the elect. Now my plan is a still bolder one than Mr. Chamberlain, though apparently a copy of it. Let us be franker than Mr. Chamberlain. Let us audaciously present the whole of the facts, shirking none, then explain them according to Mr. Chamberlain's formula. This daring truthfulness will astonish and dazzle the person sitting in darkness, and he take the explanation down before his mental vision has had time to get back into focus. Let us say to him, our case is simple. On the 1st of May, Dewey destroyed the Spanish fleet. This left the archipelago in the hands of its proper and rightful owners, the Filipino nation. Their army number, 0 men, and they were competent to whip out or starve out the little Spanish garrison. Then the people could set up a government of their own devising. Our traditions required that Dewey should now set up his warning sign and go away. But the master of the game happened to think of another plan, the European plan. He acted upon it. This was to send out an army ostensibly to help the native patriots put the finishing touch upon their long and plucky struggle for independence, but really to take their land away from them and keep it. That is, in the interest of progress and civilization. The plan developed, stage by stage, and quite satisfactorily. We entered into a military alliance with the trusting Filipinos, and they hemmed in Manila on the land side. And by their valuable help the place, with its garrison of 8,000 or 10,000 Spaniards, was captured, a thing which we could not have accomplished unaided at that time. We got their help by ingenuity. We knew they were fighting for their independence, and that they had been at it for 2 years. We knew they supposed that we also were fighting in their worthy cause, just as we had helped the Cubans fight for Cuban independence, and we allowed them to go on thinking so. Manila was ours, and we could get along without them. Then we showed our hand. Of course, they were surprised, that was natural. Surprised and disappointed and grieved. To them it looked un-American, uncharacteristic, foreign to our established traditions. And this was natural, too, for we were only playing the American game in public and private, it was the European. It was neatly done, very neatly, and it bewildered them. They could not understand it, for we had been so friendly, so affectionate, even with those simple-minded patriots. We, our own selves, had brought back out of exile their leader, their hero, their hope, their Washington Aguinaldo, brought him in a warship in high honor under the sacred shelter and hospitality of the flag, brought him back and restored him to his people, and got their moving and eloquent gratitude for it. Yes, we had been so friendly to them, and had heartened them up in so many ways. We had lent them guns and ammunition, advised with them, exchanged pleasant courtesies with them, placed our sick and wounded in their kindly care, entrusted our Spanish prisoners to their humane and honest hands, fought shoulder to shoulder with them against the common enemy, our own phrase, praised their courage, praised their gallantry, praised their mercifulness, praised their fine and honorable conduct, borrowed their trenches, borrowed strong positions which they had previously captured from the Spaniards, petted them, lied to them officially proclaiming that our land and naval forces came to give them their freedom, and displaced 267 the bad Spanish government fooled them, used them until we needed them no longer, then derided the sucked orange and threw it away. We kept the positions which we had beguiled them of. By and by, we moved a force forward and overlapped patriot ground a clever thought, for we needed trouble, and this would produce it. A Filipino soldier, crossing the ground, where no one had a right to forbid him, was shot by our sentry. The badgered patriots resented this with arms, without waiting to know whether Aguinaldo, who was absent, would approve or not. Aguinaldo did not approve, but that availed nothing. What we wanted, in the interest of progress and civilization, was the archipelago, unencumbered by patriots struggling for independence. And war was what we needed. We clinched our opportunity. It is Mr. Chamberlain's case over again, at least in its motive and intention, and we played the game as adroitly as he played it himself. At this point in our frank statement of fact to the person sitting in darkness, we should throw in a little trade taffy about the blessings of civilization for a change, and for the refreshment of his spirit then, go on with our tale. We and the Patriots having captured Manila, Spain's ownership of the archipelago, and her sovereignty over it were at an end obliterated, annihilated, not a rag or shred of either remaining behind. It was then that we conceived the divinely humorous idea of buying both of these specters from Spain. It is quite safe to confess this to the person sitting in darkness, since neither he nor any other 268 sane person will believe it. In buying those ghosts for 20 millions, we also contracted to take care of the friars and their accumulations. I think we also agreed to propagate leprosy and smallpox, but as to this there is doubt. But it is not important. Persons afflicted with the friars do not mind other diseases. With our treaty ratified, Manila subdued, and our ghosts secured, we had no further use for Aguinaldo and the owners of the archipelago. We forced a war, and we have been hunting America's guest and ally through the woods and swamps ever since. At this point in the tale, it will be well to boast a little of our war work and our heroisms in the field, so as to make our performance look as fine as England's in South Africa. But I believe it will not be best to emphasize this too much. We must be cautious. Of course, we must read the war telegrams to the person, in order to keep up our frankness. But we can throw an air of humorousness over them, and that will modify their grim eloquence a little, and their rather indiscreet exhibitions of gory exultation. Before reading to him the following display heads of the dispatches of November 18, 1900, it will be well to practice on them in private first, so as to get the right tang of lightness and gaiety into them. Administration weary of protracted hostilities. Real war ahead for Filipino. Rebels will show no mercy. Kitchener's plan adopted. Kitchener knows how to handle disagreeable people who are fighting for their homes and their liberties, and we must let on that we are merely imitating Kitchener and have no national interest in the matter, further than to get ourselves admired by the great family of nations, in which august company, our master of the game, has bought a place for us in the back row. Of course, we must not venture to ignore our General MacArthur's report. So, why do they keep on printing those embarrassing things? We must drop them trippingly from the tongue and take the chances. During the last 10 months, our losses have been 268 killed and wounded. Filipino loss, 3,227 killed and wounded. We must stand ready to grab the person sitting in darkness, for he will swoon away at this confession, saying, "Good God, those niggers spare their wounded, and the Americans massacre theirs." We must bring him to and coax him and coddle him, and assure him that the ways of providence are best, and that it would not become us to find fault with them. And then, to show him that we are only imitators, not originators, we must read the following passage from the letter of an American soldier, lad in the Philippines to his mother, published in Public Opinion of Decorah, Iowa, describing the finish of a victorious battle. 270, we never left one alive. If one was wounded, we would run our bayonets through him. Having now laid all the historical facts before the person sitting in darkness, we should bring him to again and explain them to him. We should say to him, they look doubtful, but in reality they are not. There have been lies, yes, but they were told in a good cause. We have been treacherous, but that was only in order that real good might come out of apparent evil. True, we have crushed a deceived and confiding people. We have turned against the weak and the friendless who trusted us. We have stamped out a just and intelligent and well-ordered republic. We have stabbed an ally in the back and slapped the face of a guest. We have bought a shadow from an enemy that hadn't it to sell. We have robbed a trusting friend of his land and his liberty. We have invited our clean young men to shoulder a discredited musket and do bandits. Work under a flag which bandits have been accustomed to fear, not to follow. We have debauched America's honor and blackened her face before the world, but each detail was for the best. We know this. The head of every state and sovereignty in Christendom, and percent of every legislative body in Christendom, including our Congress and our 50 state legislatures, are members not only of the Church, but also of the blessings of civilization. Trust, this world-girdling accumulation of trained morals, high principles, and justice cannot do an unright thing, 271 an unfair thing, an ungenerous thing, an unclean thing. It knows what it is about. Give yourself no uneasiness, it is all right. Now then, that will convince the person. You will see. It will restore the business. Also, it will elect the master of the game to the vacant place in the trinity of our national gods, and there on their high thrones the three will sit, age after age, in the people's sight, each bearing the emblem of his service. Washington, the sword of the liberator. Lincoln, the slave's broken chains. The master, the chains repaired. It will give the business a splendid new start, you will see. Everything is prosperous. Now, everything is just as we should wish it. We have got the archipelago, and we shall never give it up. Also, we have every reason to hope that we shall have an opportunity before very long to slip out of our congressional contract with Cuba and give her something better in the place of it. It is a rich country, and many of us are already beginning to see that the contract was a sentimental mistake. But now right now is the best time to do some profitable rehabilitating work that will set us up and make us comfortable and discourage gossip. We cannot conceal from ourselves that, privately, we are a little troubled about our uniform. It is one of our prides. It is acquainted with honor. It is familiar with great deeds and noble. We love it, we revere it, and so this errand it is on makes us uneasy. And our flag another pride of ours, our chiefest. We have worship it so. And when we have seen it in far lands glimpsing it unexpectedly in that strange sky, waving its welcome and benediction to us we have caught our breaths, and uncovered our heads, and couldn't speak, for a moment, for the thought of what it was to us and the great ideals it stood for. Indeed, we must do something about these things. It is easily managed. We can have a special 1-hour states do it. We can have just our usual flag, with the white stripes painted black and the stars replaced by the skull and crossbones. And we do not need that civil commission out there. Having no powers, it has to invent them, and that kind of work cannot be effectively done by just anybody. An expert is required. Mr. Croker can be spared. We do not want the United States represented there, but only the game. By help of these suggested amendments, progress and civilization in that country can have a boom, and it will take in the persons who are sitting in darkness, and we can resume business at the old stand, rebels. Mumble that funny word, don't let the person catch it distinctly. To my missionary critics. North American Review, 1901. I have received many newspaper cuttings, also letters from several clergymen, also a note from the Rev. Dr. Judson Smith, corresponding secretary of the American Board of Foreign Missions, all of a like tenor, all saying, substantially, what is said in the cutting here copied. An apology due from Mr. Clemens. The evidence of the past day or two should induce Mark Twain to make for the Amen corner and formulate a prompt apology for his scathing attack on the Rev. Dr. Ament, the veteran Chinese missionary. The assault was based on a Peking dispatch to the New York Sun, which said that Dr. Ament had collected from the Chinese in various places damages 13 times in excess of actual losses. So Mark Twain charged Mr. Ament with bullyragging, extortion, and things. A Peking dispatch to the Sun yesterday, however, explains that the amount collected was not 13 times the damage sustained, but one-third in excess of the indemnities, and that the blunder was due to a cable error in transmission. The 13D got converted into 13. Yesterday, the Rev. Judson Smith, Secretary of the American Board, received a dispatch from Dr. Ament, calling attention to the cable blunder, and declaring that all the collections which he made were approved by the Chinese officials. The fractional amount that was collected in excess of actual losses, he explains, is being used for the support of widows and orphans. So collapses completely and convulsively Mark Twain's sensational and ugly bombardment of a missionary, whose character and services should have exempted him from such an assault. 274 from the charge, the underpinning has been knocked out. To Dr. Ament, Mr. Clemens has done an injustice which is gross but unintentional. If Mark Twain is the man we take him to be, he won't be long in filing a retraction, plus an apology. I have no prejudice against apologies. I trust I shall never withhold one when it is due. I trust I shall never even have a disposition to do so. These letters and newspaper paragraphs are entitled to my best attention. Respect for their writers, and for the humane feeling which has prompted their utterances requires this of me. It may be barely possible that, if these requests for an apology had reached me before the 20th of February, I might have had a sort of qualified chance to apologize. But on that day appeared the two little cablegrams referred to in the newspaper cutting, copied above, one from the Rev. Dr. Smith to the Rev. Dr. Ament, the other from Dr. Ament to Dr. Smith, and my small chance died then. In my opinion, these cablegrams ought to have been suppressed, for it seems clear that they give Dr. Ament's case entirely away. Still, that is only an opinion and may be a mistake. It will be best to examine the case from the beginning, by the light of the documents connected with it. Exhibit A. This is a dispatch from Mr. Chamberlain, chief of the Sun's correspondence staff in Peking. It appeared in the Sun last Christmas Eve, and in referring to it hereafter I will call it the CE dispatch for short. The Rev. Mr. Ament, of the American Board of Foreign Missions, has returned from a trip which he made for the purpose of collecting indemnities for damages done by boxers. Everywhere he went, he compelled the Chinese to pay. He says that all his native Christians are now provided for. He had 700 of them under his charge, and 300 were killed. He has collected tales for each of these murders, and has compelled full payment for all the property belonging to Christians that was destroyed. He also assessed fines amounting to 13 times the amount of the indemnity. This money will be used for the propagation of the gospel. Mr. Ament declares that the compensation he has collected is moderate when compared with the amount secured by the Catholics, who demand, in addition to money, head for head. They collect 500 taels for each murder of a Catholic. In the Wenqiu country, 680 Catholics were killed, and for this the European Catholics here demand 0 strings of cash and heads. In the course of a conversation, Mr. Ament referred to the attitude of the missionaries toward the Chinese. He said, I deny emphatically that the missionaries are vindictive, that they generally looted, or that they have done anything since the siege that the circumstances did not demand. I criticize the Americans. The soft hand of the Americans is not as good as the mailed fist of the Germans. If you deal with the Chinese with a soft hand, they will take advantage of it. In an article addressed to the person sitting in darkness, published in the North American Review for February, I made some comments upon this CE dispatch. In an open letter to me, from the Rev. Dr. Smith, published in the Tribune of February 15th, doubt is cast upon the authenticity of the dispatch. Up to the 20th of February, this doubt was an important factor in the case. Dr. Ament's brief cablegram, 276 published on that date, took the importance all out of it. In the open letter, Dr. Smith quotes this passage from a letter from Dr. Ament, dated November 13th. The italics are mine. This time I propose to settle affairs without the aid of soldiers or legations. This cannot mean two things, but only one, that, previously, he had collected by armed force. Also, in the open letter, Dr. Smith quotes some praises of Dr. Ament and the Rev. Mr. Tewkesbury, furnished by the Rev. Dr. Sheffield, and says, Dr. Sheffield is not accustomed to speak thus of thieves, or extortioners, or braggarts. What can he mean by those vigorous expressions? Can he mean that the first two would be applicable to a missionary who should collect from B, with the aid of soldiers, indemnities possibly due by A, and upon occasion go out looting? Exhibit B. Testimony of George Lynch, endorsed as entirely trustworthy by the Tribune and the Herald, war correspondent in the Cuban and South African wars, and in the march upon Peking for the rescue of the legations. The italics are mine. When the soldiers were prohibited from looting, no such prohibition seemed to operate with the missionaries. For instance, the Rev. Mr. Tewksbury held a great sale of looted goods, which lasted several days. A day or two after the relief, when looking for a place to sleep in, I met the Rev. Mr. Ament, of the American Board of Foreign 277 Missions. He told me he was going to take possession of the house of a wealthy Chinaman who was an old enemy of his, as he had interfered much in the past with his missionary labors in Peking. A couple of days afterwards he did so, and held a great sale of his enemy's effects. I bought a sable cloak at it for $125 and a couple of statues of Buddha. As the stock became depleted, it was replenished by the efforts of his converts, who were ransacking the houses in the neighborhood. New York Herald, February 18th. It is Dr. Smith, not I, who has suggested that persons who act in this way are thieves and extortioners. Exhibit 100. Sir Robert Hart, in the Fortnightly Review for January, 1901. This witness has been for many years the most prominent and important Englishman in China, and bears an irreproachable reputation for moderation, fairness, and truth-speaking. Enclosing a description of the revolting scenes which followed the occupation of Peking, when the Christian armies, with the proud exception of the American soldiery, let us be thankful for that, gave themselves up to a ruthless orgy of robbery and spoliation, he says, the italics are mine. And even some missionaries took such a leading part in spoiling the Egyptians for the greater glory of God that a bystander was heard to say. For a century to come, Chinese converts will consider looting and vengeance Christian virtues. It is Dr. Smith, not I, who has suggested that persons who act in this way are thieves and extortioners. According to Mr. Lynch and Mr. Martin, another war correspondent, Dr. Ament helped to spoil several of those Egyptians. Mr. Martin took 278 photograph of the scene. It was reproduced in the Herald. I have it. Exhibit 500. In a brief reply to Dr. Smith's open letter to me, I said this in the Tribune. I am italicizing several words for a purpose. Whenever he, Dr. Smith, can produce from the Rev. Mr. Ament an assertion that the Sun's character-blasting dispatch was not authorized by him, and whenever Dr. Smith can buttress Mr. Ament's disclaimer with a confession from Mr. Chamberlain, the head of the Laffin News Service in China, that that dispatch was a false invention and unauthorized, the case against Mr. Ament will fall at once to the ground. Exhibit E. Brief cablegrams, referred to above, which passed between Dr. Smith and Dr. Ament and were published on February 20th. Ament Peking, reported December 24 you're collecting 13 times actual losses, using for propagating the gospel. Are these statements true? Cable specific answer. Smith. Statement untrue. Collect 3 for church expenses, additional actual damages, now supporting widows and orphans. Publication 13 times blunder cable. All collections received approval Chinese officials, who are urging further settlement same line. Ament. Only 2 questions are asked. Specific answers required, no perilous wanderings among the other details of the unhappy dispatch desired. Exhibit F. Letter from Dr. Smith to me, dated March 8th. The italics are mine, they tag inaccuracies of statement. Permit me to call your attention to the marked paragraphs in the enclosed papers, and to ask you to note their relation to the 2 conditions named in your letter to the New York Tribune of February 15th. The first is Dr. Ament's denial of the truth of the dispatch in the New York Sun of December 24th, on which your criticisms of him in the North American Review of February were founded. The second is a correction by the Sun's special correspondent in Peking of the dispatch, printed in the Sun of December 24th. Since, as you state in your letter to the Tribune, the case against Mr. Ament would fall to the ground if Mr. Ament denied the truth of the Sun's first dispatch, and if the Sun's news agency in Peking also declared that dispatch false, and these 2 conditions have thus been fulfilled, I am sure that upon having these facts brought to your attention, you will gladly withdraw the criticisms that were founded on a cable blunder. I think Dr. Smith ought to read me more carefully, then he would not make so many mistakes. Within the narrow space of 2 paragraphs, totaling 11 lines, he has scored 9 departures from fact out of a possible 9.5. Now, is that parliamentary? I do not treat him like that. Whenever I quote him, I am particular not to do him the least wrong, or make him say anything he did not say. 1. Mr. Ament doesn't deny the truth of the CE dispatch. He merely changes one of its phrases, without materially changing the meaning, and immaterially corrects a cable blunder, which correction I accept. He was asked no question about the other 4/5 of the CE dispatch. 2. I said nothing about special correspondence. I named the right and responsible man, Mr. Chamberlain. The correction referred to is a repetition of the one I have just accepted, which immaterially, 280 changes, 13 times to 1/3 extra tax. 3. I did not say anything about the Sun's news agency. I said Chamberlain. I have every confidence in Mr. Chamberlain, but I am not personally acquainted with the others. 4. Once more, Mr. Ament didn't deny the truth of the CE dispatch, but merely made unimportant emendations of a couple of its many details. 5. I did not say, if Mr. Ament denied the truth of the CE dispatch. I said, if he would assert that the dispatch was not authorized by him. For example, I did not suppose that the charge that the Catholic missionaries want Chinamen beheaded was true, but I did want to know if Dr. Ament personally authorized that statement and the others, as coming from his lips. Another detail. One of my conditions was that Mr. Chamberlain must not stop with confessing that the CE was a false invention. He must also confess that it was unauthorized. Dr. Smith has left out that large detail. 6. The Sun's news agency did not declare the CE dispatch false, but confined itself to correcting one unimportant detail of its long list, the change of 13 times to 1/3 extra. 7. The 2 conditions have not been fulfilled, far from it. 8. Those details labeled facts are only fancies. 9. Finally, my criticisms were by no means confined to that detail of the CE dispatch which we now accept as having been a cable blunder. Setting to one side these 9 departures from fact, I find that what is left of the 11 lines is straight and true. I am not blaming Dr. Smith for these discrepancies. At 281 would not be right, it would not be fair. I make the proper allowances. He has not been a journalist, as I have been a trade wherein a person is brought to book by the rest of the press so often for divergencies that, by and by, he gets to be almost morbidly afraid to indulge in them. It is so with me. I always have the disposition to tell what is not so. I was born with it, we all have it. But I try not to do it now because I have found out that it is unsafe. But with the doctor, of course, it is different. Exhibit G. I wanted to get at the whole of the facts as regards the CE dispatch, and so I wrote to China for them, when I found that the board was not going to do it. But I am not allowed to wait. It seemed quite within the possibilities that a full detail of the facts might furnish me a chance to make an apology to Mr. Ament, a chance which, I give you my word, I would have honestly used and not abused. But it is no matter. If the board is not troubled about the bulk of that lurid dispatch, why should I be? I answered the apology-urging letters of several clergymen, with the information that I had written to China for the details, and said I thought it was the only sure way of getting into a position to do fair and full justice to all concerned. But a couple of them replied that it was not a matter that could wait. That is to say, groping your way out of a jungle in the dark with guesses and conjectures is 282 better than a straight march out in the sunlight of fact. It seems a curious idea. However, those 2 clergymen were in a large measure right from their point of view and the board's, which is, putting it in the form of a couple of questions. In the opinion of the 2 clergymen and of the board, these 2 points are the only important ones in the whole CE dispatch. I accept that, therefore let us throw out the rest of the dispatch as being no longer a part of Dr. Ament's case. Exhibit H. The 2 clergymen and the board are quite content with Dr. Ament's answers upon the 2 points. Upon the first point of the 2, my own viewpoint may be indicated by a question. Chapter 999. Dr. Ament collect from B, whether by compulsion or simple demand, even so much as a penny in 283 payment for murders or depredations, without knowing, beyond question, that B, and not another, committed the murders or the depredations. Or, in other words, Chapter 999. Dr. Ament ever, by chance or through ignorance, make the innocent pay the debts of the guilty. In the article entitled To the Person Sitting in Darkness, I put forward that point in a paragraph taken from Maccallum's Imaginary History. Exhibit I. When a white boxer kills a Pawnee and destroys his property, the other Pawnees do not trouble to seek him out. They kill any white person that comes along. Also, they make some white village pay deceased. Heirs the full cash value of deceased, together with full cash value of the property destroyed. They also make the village pay, in addition, 13 times the value of that property into a fund for the dissemination of the Pawnee religion, which they regard as the best of all religions, for the softening and humanizing of the heart of man. It is their idea that it is only fair and right that the innocent should be made to suffer for the guilty, and that it is better that 90 and innocent should suffer than that one guilty person should escape. We all know that Dr. Ament did not bring suspected persons into a duly organized court and try them by just and fair Christian and civilized methods, but proclaimed his conditions, and collected damages from the innocent and the guilty alike, without any court proceedings at all. That he himself, and not the villagers, made the conditions, we learn from his letter of November 13th, already quoted from the one in which he remarked that, upon that occasion he brought no soldiers with him. The italics are mine.